Sick of getting blisters? Stop slipping and just be comfortable with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Great fit, great comfort, lots of grip, and an even better price. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
I'm not here to tell you that you need expensive football boots to play well, because simply put, you don't. With that in mind, I also don't think you should downplay the importance of a pair of football boots as a piece of equipment. In other words, you should not only pick the best boots for you based on personal preference, but especially if you're on a budget, you should look into getting the best boots you can get for the money that you have to spend. Why am I talking about this? Well, because the boots in these boxes are pretty decent. They'll get the job done, but do I think they're the best you can get for the money they cost? Well, probably not. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the brand new Nike Phantom Luna 2 Academy, the second tier takedown model in the new Phantom lineup, bearing a retail price of $95, which is obviously a lot less expensive than the $285 that they charge for the top end model. However, it does have quite a few differences. And there's also a low-cut model in the form of the Phantom GX2 Academy, which features a more traditional kind of low-cut construction through the heel. It also features a standalone tongue and is $5 less expensive with a retail price of $90. Both relatively inexpensive options by today's pricing standards, and I'm not going to lie to you in saying that they're both decent football boots in a lot of ways, but just because they're inexpensive and just okay doesn't mean they're the best value for money. Because what if I told you you could get better boots from Nike that also happen to be less expensive? If that's the case, even if football boots don't matter, why on earth would you pick these? That's exactly the question that I hope to answer for you in today's video. As we break down all the details, I talk about which other Nike model I think you might want to consider instead, and of course, we'll also take a look at how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, and if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick these up below their normal retail prices by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the links down below. And as always, if you guys enjoy these brutally honest reviews, always in the name of you getting yourself the best product you can get for the money, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2024. So first things first, let's address what I think is the most important thing that a lot of people need to realize when purchasing any takedown model, certainly in this sub $100 category, is if you want to compare this to the much more expensive top-end Elite model, there really is only one thing in common that these share, and that is the stud pattern. Other than that, everything else about the Academy tier Phantom Luna or Phantom GX is completely different from what the Elite has on offer. In other words, don't buy these because you think they're going to feel like these, because the harsh reality is they just don't. For the upper, instead of grip knit or Flyknit like you'll find on the higher end options, you're going to find Nike Skin, which is basically a mesh-based synthetic material with a polyurethane overlay that does of course include that kind of ridge texturing shared with the top end variation. However, you get none of the grippy texture, and realistically the additional grip on the ball provided by these ridges is pretty minimal to say the least. For a takedown model, I don't think this is necessarily a bad synthetic, but for whatever reason, this top layer of plastic on the upper effectively is just stiffer than what we've seen from Nike in the past whenever they've utilized this kind of mesh-based Nike Skin material. So while the boots don't necessarily feel bad on feet, they're definitely stiffer than what we've come to expect from a lot of past variations of Academy tier Nikes that have featured similar upper constructions. For the mid-cut Luna variation, you're going to find what is technically a one-piece enclosure for the upper, in that the central portion here of the lacing system is filled in with this elasticated mesh material that admittedly looks and feels very cheap. It's incredibly thin. This has to be one of the ugliest collars of any takedown model football boot, period. That stitching alone should be a crime at $95, but I guess to each their own as far as opinions are concerned. In terms of how it wraps your foot though, it does fit nicely. There is definitely a difference in the construction of the heel compared to to the low cut variation, where this is a little bit more straight up and down in terms of how it's shaped. However, comfort and lockdown does not seem to be an issue, and because you don't have an actual tongue, there's no overlapping materials, and it does feel pretty seamless across the top of the foot where the laces are positioned, which is nice. Again, I repeat this in almost every mid-cut football boot video I make. There's no ankle support provided here, especially on this Academy tier model. This is the flimsiest material of all time, and realistically, unless you just love the look of this, I can't say that I would really recommend picking the Luna over the GX for the extra $5. Where if we look at the low-cut GX2, you're getting the exact same upper. The lacing system is still off-centered, but instead of a one-piece construction, you are getting that standalone tongue, which is kind of unique to the Academy tier Phantom compared to the rest of the higher-end options that all feature variations of a one-piece upper. This traditional design I actually really like, and it kind of relates this a little bit back to the days of the OG Hypervenom Phantom 1, which I think a lot of people might like. Not to say that these feel like that in any way at all, but I do like this setup. And then of course at the rear, you are going to find an internal plastic heel counter, just like the mid-cut variation, and just a little bit more padding around the sides of the ankle as well as the back of the heel, with a synthetic leather liner on the low-cut variation, and then more of kind of like a soft microfiber material for the heel liner on the mid-cut. So that is a difference as well. And then internally, you're going to find what is a mesh liner to the insole made from a single layer of foam. However, it's fully glued in, and admittedly something that's a little bit disappointing in that Nike typically provides a better than average quality removable insole on their Academy tier takedowns. However, not the case this time around. Moving to the base, I don't have too many issues with it. I think it's still above average compared to a lot of football boots in this price point. Certainly compared to the Adidas equivalents, I think Nike does a better job with their more budget-friendly sole plate options. This admittedly does feel a little bit stiffer through the forefoot than what you're gonna find from the more expensive versions, but generally still pretty good. And then of course you are getting that Cyclone 360 FG stud pattern, which does feel more speed boot-esque in terms of having all bladed studs and giving you that bite when pushing off and digging into the ground. Of course, Nike is promoting the prioritization of rotational movements with this circular pattern of 5 bladed studs. Does it actually work? If the ground's really soft, I think rotational movement is fine, but that would typically be the case with most stud patterns. On normal, firm, natural grass playing surfaces, however, I do think that this is more clingy and just generally more aggressive than something with rounded studs when it comes to twisting and pivoting with your foot planted in the ground. So the rotational aspect of this stud pattern, I think you have to take with a grain of salt. I think that's definitely more of a marketing performance feature rather than a realistic one. But as far as overall stud patterns go, if you've worn something, for example, from the Mercurial series, this feels pretty similar to that in terms of just being really aggressive. And then there's the weight, where perhaps unsurprisingly, the Academy tier options are just not going to be as light as the Elites. How big is the difference though? That's what we're about to find out. All in the same size, 9.5 US. We'll start off with the top end Elite model, and you can see that they weigh in at 6.9 ounces, the equivalent of 197 grams, as light as most speed boots, even though this technically falls into the control category. Then we're going to throw on the low cut GX2 Academy. You can see that they weigh in at 8.1 ounces, the equivalent of 229 grams. Change the scale back 2 ounces one more time, and we'll throw on the mid-cut Luna 2 Academy, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.05 ounces, so actually a little bit lighter than the GX2 by 1 gram, 228 in total, meaning that there really isn't a weight difference between these two. However, when compared to the top-end model, they're just nowhere near as light. On feet, the fit and feel of the Academy tier Phantoms is definitely passable and even above average compared to a lot of football boots at this price point. There's even a difference in terms of the overall fit between the low and the mid, both of which I think feel pretty good. It's totally going to be a matter of personal preference in terms of which one you might like the feel of more, with the low cut being a little bit more structured at the heel and the mid cut being a little bit thinner at the heel. But like I said, both are pretty comfortable. The shaping of the boot is also pretty similar compared to the higher end Phantoms. However, it does have the stiffest feel to the upper and really does lose out on some of that elasticity that I would personally expect from something that has that mesh based Nike skin skin material. Like I said, that outside polyurethane layer just seems to be pretty firm this time around, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. They of course will soften up as you wear them in, but I don't think they feel quite as good as past Academy tier Nike Skin uppers have felt. From a width perspective, they have some decent width to them, definitely pinch the most through the toe box area, so as long as you're not super wide through the toes, these are going to work well for most foot types. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing both of these boots in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you are looking to get a pair, whether it's the low cut GX or the mid-cut Luna, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, the 2024 Phantom options at the Academy tier are overall pretty solid. They're fairly comfortable, although on the stiffer side. The touch on the ball is okay, the general shaping is decent, the quality of the sole plate and stud pattern is pretty solid, and they're not overly expensive. With that in mind, if you're on a budget and just after the best boots you can get for the money, I think you would be absolutely crazy not to go for the Tiempo Legend 10 Academy at $85 instead. Not only are they cheaper, but the Fly Touch light synthetic leather upper is softer, more pliable. The shaping and fit of the boot, I think, is to a quality standard that far exceeds what you're going to find from the Phantoms. The adjustability of the central lacing system, the comfort of the low-cut design is well above average for this price point. The sole plate and stud pattern, I would also argue, feels more premium, more like the top end models than what you're going to find from the Phantoms, and they're also lighter. Again, I'm not saying that the Academy tier Phantoms are bad, but when you compare these two football boots in just about every single category, the Tiempos are just better.